Hello, friends. Today, while we're recording this, is September 22nd, and today was the day that the Pope arrived in America. So I had a few things I wanted to share tonight about that. There's certainly a lot of excitement in America over this, and some are excited in a positive way, and some don't feel quite so positive about it. So we're going to talk about that tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about Agenda 2030 and the connection of the Pope with the UN Agenda 2030, because, friends, that's the reason why the Pope is here. And everything else that is happening with the Pope is to put pressure and influence on people to push through the Agenda 2030 and then also related programs. That's really what it's all about. And I know you've heard a lot about the month of September. Some of you might have heard that CERN was going to open a black hole into hell. Well, I'm pretty certain that didn't happen. You might have heard that the Earth was going to get hit by an asteroid. Well, that didn't happen and won't happen. In fact, there's a long list of things that people were quite freaked out about for September that haven't happened and that aren't going to happen. However, that doesn't mean that the events of September are not important, because all of those things that have been sort of like major problems, people have considered as major threats and have been worried about. What that's all about is to make you remember this September as being a big dud, so that when we get past this September, if anybody says to you, well, you know, September was significant, then you're supposed to say, well, all these things were supposed to happen, and we're still here. The rapture didn't happen. The tribulation didn't happen. We didn't get hit with an asteroid. CERN didn't open up hell, and yada, yada. So just another one of those things where people got all freaked out and nothing happened. Actually, the big event this month is the Pope coming to the United States and his direct connection with the UN Agenda 2030. That is the big thing that is happening, and yes, it is biblically significant. And the world doesn't have to blow up tomorrow for that to be true. So I can tell you with some certainty that when the Pope is speaking at the UN, you will not be raptured out. You will get to hear the entire speech. As he walks out of the building, the Antichrist is not going to come up to the platform and say, I'm the Antichrist, I'm here. That's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that this is not a significant move towards the one world government, where eventually that will happen. It really is the beginning of the final drive to world domination. And this is a very significant thing. Things are going to change in this world a lot after this. We're going to see some very major changes. Well, let's take a closer look now at the Vatican and the Pope. That looks like a lot of gold there in front of the pontiff. It tells us that he's not just the spiritual leader of one of the world's major religions. He's also the head of what's probably the wealthiest institution in the entire world. The Catholic Church's global spending matches the annual revenues of the planet's largest firms. And its assets, huge amounts of real estate, St. Patrick's Cathedral, Vatican City, some of the world's greatest art, and many treasures that are locked away in the basement of the Vatican, and nobody even knows everything that's down there. This surely exceeds those of any corporation by an order of magnitude. Realize that for the better part of 2,000 years, all the greatest treasures of the Western world found their way into the control of the Vatican. They have been hoarding up these treasures for the best part of 2,000 years. Much of what they have, you can't even put a dollar value on. It is worth so much. Things of great historical and even spiritual significance. Think, for example, of things like letters of the apostles, personal letters, things like this. Much of which they have never and will never release because it's not in the interests of their organization to do that. Of course, a lot of what the apostles had to say would not put them in a good light. And that brings me to something Yeshua said. Of course, they call him Jesus, and they have transformed him into the Greek Christ. But his name, Yeshua, is a Hebrew name because he was a Hebrew. Very, very different than the kind of pomp that we see at the Vatican. In fact, he had no special hat that looks like a fish. He didn't carry around a lot of gold jewelry. Nobody ever kissed his ring. A prostitute washed his feet once. This is what he said. Foxes have holes, the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Quite a contrast with the wealth of the Pope, his multiple Pope-mobiles, the pontifical helicopter, all of the wealth of the Vatican being treated like one of the world's greatest heads of state as he arrived here in the United States, as he arrives anywhere in the world. That's how he's treated. Whereas our master Yeshua, well, they liked him so much they nailed him to a tree. Why did he get treated that way, and why does the Pope get treated the way he gets treated? Something worth thinking about, isn't it? Well, here's from a book where the wealth of the Vatican was investigated. It's called The Vatican Billions. Now, I bring this up not just because I want to make the Vatican look bad, although I'm probably not their best friend. But nevertheless, that's not really my intent. But realize that one of the big issues of the Pope supposedly has been poverty. He's talked about the poor and how those who are wealthy need to share with the poor. Personally, I think if he really believes this, a very good place to start would be to go and sell everything he has and give it to the poor. Because that's what Yeshua Messiah said to the rich young ruler. And when the Pope does that, then we might have a reason to believe that he is sincere about helping the poor. The Vatican has large investments with the Rothschilds of Britain, France, and America. I bet you a lot of you didn't even know there are Rothschild banks in America. Large investments. With the Hambros Bank and the Credit Suisse in London and Zurich. In the United States, it has large investments with the Morgan Bank, the Chase Manhattan Bank, the First National Bank of New York, the Bankers Trust Company, and others. As a matter of fact, they have so much money in one article that came out not too long ago. They just happened to find an account they didn't know anything about that had billions of euros in it. It was just like kicking around in the sofa or something. The Vatican has billions of shares in the most powerful international corporations, such as Gulf Oil, Shell, General Motors, Bethlehem Steel, General Electric, International Business Machines, TWA, and others. When to that is added all the real estate, property, stocks, and shares abroad, then the staggering accumulation of the wealth of the Catholic Church becomes so formidable as to defy any rational assessment. This book lays out much, much more than what is summarized here on this slide. The wealth of the Catholic Church, I'm sure, is beyond anything that any of us could possibly even begin to grasp. And so it's interesting that the Pope is taking up the cause of the poor. And he is telling the United States and other countries to take in the refugees. And I'm wondering how many refugees the Vatican will be taking in. Kind of an interesting question, isn't it? Am I saying that I think the Pope and the Vatican are insincere? I think I am. Yeah, that is what I'm saying. And also, you know, another big message of the Pope that we're going to be hearing while he's here is how bad capitalism is. Yeah. He talks a lot about how bad capitalism is. And yet, look at how heavily invested they are in all of these banks and all these companies. If he thought capitalism was so bad, you would think he wouldn't be so invested in all of these capitalist corporations. But you see, capitalism and corporatism are two different things. Nobody's told you that, have they? Capitalism is you starting a little business and going out and making a profit and improving your business, doing better for yourself. That's capitalism. And that's a good thing. That's how, for instance, this country, the United States, began, and this really contributed to the growth of the United States and the United States becoming a great economic power. Corporatism is something else. You know, they talk a lot about things like free markets and capitalism, but that's really not what corporatism is. Corporatism is all about monopolies. What the big corporations want is special favor from powerful people, especially from the government, to be in a favored position where they actually become more powerful than even the governments of this world. This is where we're at right now. And that's what corporatism is. You won't hear the Pope decrying corporatism. And the reason is because the corporations are really above the people that he's targeting. And they are his cronies. They are his friends. They're not people that he's going to want to create any waves for. So he talks a lot about capitalism. We need to know the difference between capitalism and corporatism, because these are two very, very different things. And the things that he's having to say about capitalism, many of them are true about corporatism. The corporations of this world are, in fact, raping the planet, stealing from the poor, and really causing a tremendous amount of pain and even death in this world. And no doubt many of these corporations that the Vatican is invested in are involved in that. So while it kind of seems in some ways that this particular message might agree with the facts, when you realize how deeply invested the Vatican is in that entire system and that corporate system, it certainly takes away from the moral authority to really talk much about that. Well, we made a comparison between Yeshua Messiah and his status as a peasant. And the status of the Pope. After considering the amount of wealth that the Vatican has, it's kind of interesting to look at Luke chapter 4. Here's where Yeshua went off into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. It says, the devil, leading him up on a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. The devil said to him, I will give you all this authority and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I want. So who is it that has the world's authority to give out authority and glory and riches and wealth? What does the Bible tell us about that? It's Satan, isn't it? And this is what he wants in order to get anything from him. If you therefore will worship before me, it will all be yours. Simple. Just a little act of worship. And all that wealth, all that power can be yours. Would you like to be one of the wealthy, powerful people in the world? Like the Pope, like all the people that he's hobnobbing with while he's on his whirlwind tour? Well, you can do that. You just have to make a deal. Yeshua answered him, back off, Satan. He wasn't going to consider that deal for a moment. He said, it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and you shall serve him only. They might just start with going through all of their expensive basilicas and cathedrals and smashing all the idols. And that might start them in the right direction. Well, let's think about Pope Francis and what's actually going on with him. He is a spiritual leader of 1.2 billion people. That's how many Catholics there are in the world. 1.2 billion people. That's a lot of people. And this article from Forbes tells us that he has made it his he's made it his mission to transform the long-standing conservative image of the Catholic Church. And here's some of his most controversial statements. He said, evolution and the Big Bang are true. He added that God is not a magician with a magic wand. He shocked the world last year when he said, who am I to judge when discussing homosexuality? He's the first Jesuit and Latin American bishop of Rome. He preaches compassion for the poor and a greater role for women while signaling the church to quit its focus on abortion, gay marriage, and the use of contraceptives. I wonder why he would be saying that. Do you think it could have anything to do with getting along better with the United Nations? Do you think that perhaps the reason why the things that Pope Francis is talking about dovetail so perfectly with the UN agenda? You think there could be something in that for the Pope and the Catholic Church? Have you ever heard of a Pope that actually wrote an encyclical on global warming? That's quite transparent, isn't it? You know, it seems like there was a big meeting. And whether it happened in person, whether it happened electronically, whether it happened through subordinates or whatever, what we're seeing here is a convergence of major players in the world all coming together on these same issues. Clearly, deals have been struck here that really change the balance of things in the world. And it all revolves around Agenda 2030 at the UN. Agenda 2030 is about managing the Earth's resources, which, by the way, you're considered part of those resources. And literally nothing is left out of Agenda 2030. And all of this needs to be managed by some kind of a global framework that very soon turns into a global one world government. And you see, we have to have this because if we don't, global warming is going to destroy the planet. Or some other crisis is going to destroy the planet. But if we sign up for it, they're going to totally do away with poverty, which means that everybody's going to get a welfare check, I guess. That is, all the people that aren't dead. But whatever else we can say about Agenda 2030, we have to say that it must be good for the Vatican, because they're putting a lot of energy, a lot of effort into selling this. Now, of course, we already know that President Obama is totally down with the UN. And all of this is, he's on the record for all of these things, including Agenda 2030. So that's not a big surprise. We do see conservative congressmen and senators who are objecting to the things that the Pope is saying. And of course, he's giving a speech to them. And as I'm speaking, I haven't heard the speech yet, but I have a pretty good idea what it's going to be about. He is going to be pushing them, pressuring them to adopt this green agenda. There's a meeting coming up in Paris for this, where they want to have a very aggressive agreement between the nations of the world to cut back on CO2 in the atmosphere. That translates for all of us into restrictions on anything that produces CO2, which I guess that includes breathing, doesn't it? But in addition to that, fuel. So all of that is going to become much more expensive. And it'll affect us in other ways. It will affect the economy, lots of different things. But of course, the conservatives in America need to be against this. And they are, and they're huffing and puffing against it. But the fact that the Pope came and lectured them about it gives them an excuse when they just get on board and they push all this through. See, that's how it really works with them, isn't it? They huff and puff about things, but in the end, they just go along with the system. That's to keep all of us fooled into thinking that it actually matters who you vote for. Of course it doesn't. Our votes don't change anything, because other people make the decisions. Not us, not the voters. We don't make the decisions. It's the people who have the corporate billions under their control. They're the people that are able to make the decisions. They're the ones with the votes that count. But they put on the big show for us. So, you know, enjoy it. You might want to get out a bowl of popcorn, listen to the speech, and you'll really enjoy it when you hear all the conservatives decrying what the Pope had to say and so on. But in the end, it'll be just like all the other things that happen, where the conservatives just give in the end and just go along with the globalist agenda. So this is, I think, what to expect again this time around. Then, of course, the Pope's glory moment will be when he's before the UN. And this will be his time to shine before all the world leaders, lecturing them on what they should be doing, and essentially whipping everybody into shape to get on board with the globalist agenda. Well, here's a little bit more about Pope Francis. We're going to play a video for you now.
Il clima è un bene comune, oggi gravemente minacciato. Lo indicano fenomeni come i cambiamenti climatici, il riscaldamento globale, l'aumento degli eventi meteorologici estremi. Rivolgo a tutti un presente invito a compiere ogni sforzo perché ai tavoli in cui si cerca il modo per risolvere l'unica complessa crisi socio-ambientale, di fronte all'emergenza dei cambiamenti climatici, mi sento di proporre che questo dialogo diventi un'autentica alleanza per arrivare ad accordi ambientali globali realmente significativi.
Pope Francis' highly anticipated encyclical was leaked before the scheduled June 18th release date, and in it he names climate change as the greatest threat to humanity. He also calls for reduction of the population and creation of a new global political authority to save mankind from disaster by overseeing the reduction of pollution and the development of poor countries and regions. This sounds suspiciously like the new Sustainable Development Agenda about to be unveiled at the UN in September. The Pope is scheduled to give the initial speech at the conference on what is becoming known as Agenda 21 on steroids. This new program addresses more than the environment. It also deals with poverty, education, agriculture, and gender equality. In addition, he's scheduled to meet with Obama and address the U.S. Congress during his visit. The timing of this encyclical isn't accidental. The Guardian reported that the purpose was to ensure maximum public impact before the UN conference. Francis hopes to add moral authority to the scientific arguments about the need for a global agreement to deal with climate change. The Vatican has hired experts to help craft their new agenda, and one of them, John Schellenhuber, is a German professor who earlier had stated that the planet is overpopulated by at least 6 billion people. This all sounds very much like the new 10 Commandments on the Georgia Guidestones, and raises questions about what moral authority the Vatican is following. While the Pope won't be calling for such a drastic reduction, the fact that Schellenhuber is his primary advisor and will stand beside him at the encyclical's release is prompting some to ask whether this is really about saving the planet or about increasing the political power of the Vatican. He also will call for lifestyle changes and reduction of energy consumption to avert unprecedented destruction of the ecosystem. It's a strange focus for the papacy, especially since there hasn't been any sign of global warming for over a decade.
That kind of gives you a short rundown as to what this is all about. It's very interesting that, of course, the Vatican, with all of their resources, is able to call in scientists and get scientific information. And they are beating the drum about global warming. And yet, as was mentioned there in the video, there hasn't actually been any global warming for a long time. There is ups and downs, of course, in the Earth's warming cycle, but that has to do with the sun. That really isn't anything to do with the people. But there hasn't been any warming in quite a long time. As a matter of fact, just this year, there's been a great increase in the amount of Arctic ice. And contrary to what they're telling us, the polar bears aren't all dying or anything. And nevertheless, they're pushing this. And, you know, if people hear it enough, they do believe it. Now, what is the real significance of this? Is it significant? Well, of course it's significant. If you have the leading religious figure in the world who really has clout far beyond the 1.2 billion people who are Catholics, the world is really watching and listening. But then in addition to that, you have the President of the United States, you have the European leaders recently The European Union was calling for a one world government order. Yeah, there are some holdouts in the world, and they will have to be dealt with. But this is happening, friends. This is happening. The plan is a one world government. And the world is being wooed into this. So they're not going to take you right out tomorrow and threaten they're going to cut your head off if you don't get the mark. It's understandable that some people are worried that might happen tomorrow. It won't happen tomorrow. But it will happen once that one world order is so in control of everybody's life that there's no possibility of any significant resistance. Then the whole tone will change dramatically once that happens, because these people, they don't really like you. They're all superior to you. That's how they feel. And they need you. They need slaves. And that's how they see us. But they don't really like us. So when we get out of line, their inclination is not going to be to treat us according to our human rights. I prefer God-given rights myself. Human rights that are given by a human organization can be taken away just as fast, can't they? And will be. We know from the scriptures how this all ends up, don't we? So the big question we have right now is not where it's going. The big question is, when is it going there? Now, in the Daniel seminar that I'm doing, I'm going to be addressing issues of timing. But today I do want to talk about that a little bit because we have actually heard reports from different people who believe that the rapture is going to happen immediately. Others that think the tribulation is going to break out immediately. I mean, like next week or something. And while these things certainly are approaching, okay, they're on the horizon, they're approaching, but this agenda needs to unfold somewhat before we actually get to these spiritual events that are going to be happening. That doesn't mean, though, we can just sit around on our hands, because these are times that really do call on us to make changes, to get ourselves ready for things that are happening. And we have no time to lose, friends. We need to be awake, alert, and we need to be using our time wisely, because this is sand through the hourglass. This is what is happening. But let's look at these two things, because these are the two big things: the rapture and the tribulation. I have some verses here from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1 through 5. I have a major teaching that I did on this in my radio show. So if you want more information, let us know at Tsiyon and we'll share that with you. But here's what it says in 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 5. Now, brothers, concerning the coming of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, and being gathered together to him. See, that's the thing we call the rapture, right? When he comes and we're changed and we're gathered to him. Concerning that, we ask you not to be quickly shaken in your mind, nor yet be troubled, either by spirit or by word or by letter as from us, saying the day of Messiah has come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for it will not be unless the apostasy comes first. Well, I'm pretty sure the apostasy has come. I think we can count on that. So we can see we are really getting closer, aren't we? It's very clear the apostasy is here. But there's another thing. And the man of sin is revealed, the son of destruction, he who opposes and exalts himself against all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, setting himself up as God. Well, we do have a lot of little antichrists running around. But do we have the Antichrist, the man of sin, revealed to the world as saying that he is God? We haven't seen that. And what this is telling us here is our being gathered together to the Lord can't happen until that happens first. So I can tell you then, we're not there. And I do know that there are thousands, if not millions, of Christians that are waiting with bated breath for that to happen. And you may be feeling kind of scared, maybe even a little bit panicky to see things happening in the world, but this rapture isn't happening. Well, I would just suggest to you that regardless of what your theology may be about this, it would be very prudent of you to be prepared for great changes in this world, to strengthen your relationship with the Lord, to dig into His Word more deeply, and to get a better understanding of what is really required of you in these last days. That's really important because things are changing dramatically. Now, one last thing that Paul said here is he said, don't you remember that when I was still with you, I told you these things? Do you know how Paul was able to tell those believers these things? It's because he knew and understood the book of Daniel and the other prophets that tell us all about these things. He spent time in the Word so that he knew what it really said. And that's what we do here in Zion. That's what we're doing with our Beasts of Daniel seminar. We're going to keep digging into that more deeply. I really want to invite everyone to join us for that, because we don't just get sort of washed away in all the emotion and all of the superstition even. We're tied to what the scriptures say. You know, for our seminar, I felt led that our seminar should be during Sukkot, which starts kind of late this year in terms of being in September. It starts on the 29th of September. And some people thought, well, that's too late. That's after the Pope comes. That's after a lot of different things are going to happen. And of course, you know, if CERN is going to open up hell and stuff, or we're going to get hit by an asteroid or whatever, then I might not get to do my seminar. But obviously, I knew that that stuff wasn't going to interfere with the seminar. That's not what's going on right now. And what I believed was that after these events happen, after everybody watches on TV and sees the Pope talking to Congress, the speech at the UN, and all that happens with that, and all the rest of it that's going to be happening, that's the time that people are going to want to know, well, what does this really mean? And so it turns out that the timing is really perfect for looking into this in the book of Daniel. And that's the time people really need all of that. And at that point in time, you will have sifted through all these things that people have said about September, and then you'll be in the same place I'm at as to what I want to talk about. That's going to be what you're going to want to talk about too. And it really all revolves around this. It all revolves around the United Nations and Agenda 21. Now, all the focus is on the Pope, but it really should be on, well, what they call Agenda 21 on steroids, Agenda 2030, because that's what's ahead of us. That's what we're going to be seeing kicking in, and that's going to have a very big effect on our lives. So, talking now about the rapture, can we expect to see that before the man of sin is revealed? Scriptures tell us no. It's not going to happen. Well, what about the tribulation? Is that about to break out? Here we have Revelation chapter 7, and it tells us here, I saw another angel ascend from the sunrise, having the seal of the living God. He cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, don't harm the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their foreheads. I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed out of every tribe of the children of Israel. Every tribe. Now you might be thinking, well, the Jews are back in Israel. And you might be right. But what about the people from the tribe of Issachar? Or the people of Asher? Are they back in the land? How about the remnant from the tribe of Benjamin? Or Manasseh? Or Ephraim? Are they back in the land? See, this hasn't been fulfilled, has it? And what does it mean to say to these angels, hold back these winds? These four winds, hold back these winds. Those are the winds of the tribulation. And why do they have to be held back? The reason they have to be held back is because if they're not held back, the tribulation would start. Isn't that just what it looks like? This is why so many people feel like the tribulation's about to start. Because what do we need to start the tribulation? I think we need a really big crisis. Once they get the whole thing rolling, a really big crisis, a big global crisis, which is not hard for them to do, where everybody's really scared, then they could launch their one world government. So that could happen really soon, right? Except the four angels are holding back the four winds of the tribulation. And why are they doing it? It's so that the remnant of Israel can be sealed. This is a work that is underway, but it hasn't been completed. And the remnant of Israel are not back in their land. So can the tribulation begin? No. Friends, too, it doesn't have to be the tribulation to be difficult. Okay? It's not like everything's just going to be fine and then boom, we have the tribulation and it's terrible. That's not really what the scriptures tell us. The scriptures talk about it getting progressively more difficult. And really, these events that are happening now in this whole Agenda 2030 and what this is bringing in, that's things getting more difficult. And they're going to get quite a bit more difficult in many ways. And we are going to be seeing our freedoms being impinged upon. And, you know, you might think that you can stop this. But I'll tell you now that political efforts won't stop this. And some kind of a revolt, really, citizens don't have the power to overturn this. Besides that, Yahweh has given it to these people. Basically saying, okay, it's time, go for it. You know, they've been chomping at the bit for this ever since the Tower of Babel. They're finally going to get their day. Everybody was so angry at Jeremiah when he was telling the unfaithful people in Jerusalem that Babylon was going to come in and destroy Jerusalem and the temple, and that they should not oppose Babylon. They even threw him in a cistern and left him there to die because they didn't like his message. Who was right, him or them? You see, the things that Yahweh has determined, that he's put in his word, the things that must happen, you're not going to change those things. You're not going to change them through political maneuvering. You're not going to change them by force of arms. You're not going to change them even through prayer, because he's not going to act contrary to his word. These things are going to happen, and the world is changing. We are seeing it. This year, I'm talking about this Hebrew year that started in the spring of 2015. We're still in this Hebrew year that started in the spring of 2015, contrary to what some people would tell you. This Hebrew year is a turning point. And we've all been seeing it, we've all been feeling it, and it's bringing in a change. And this has been true throughout this last days period. 2001 was a Shemitah year. How much did that change things? Did the world ever go back to what it was like before then? And then 2008 was another one of these Shemitah years. That's when we had the global economic crisis. Has the world gone back to what it was like before that? No. Now we've got this, Agenda 2030, and we've got the Pope, and we've got the United Nations, and we've got the President of the United States, we've got the European Union, we've got countries around the world that are all for this, okay? Is that going to change things? See how these things keep stacking up on top of each other? That's what's going to keep happening until we get to that point. Till the remnant of the tribes are returned, as the scriptures talk about. Why is it that every time anything happens, all people ever talk about is the rapture? Did they not ever read their Bible? You know, go back and read the prophets. Every single prophet talks about the return of the remnant of Israel to the land in the last days. Where the heck was Hal Lindsey and his book talking about that? Where are those myriad teachers out there, those famous teachers that live in $1 million houses telling you about the rapture, why haven't they told you about the remnant? I'll tell you why, because they're not the remnant and they don't know. We know. We know. How do we know? It's not just a doctrine to us. We're part of it. We're telling you about it, so you'll know. I hope you'll listen. The Vatican, the Pope, and UN Agenda 2030. It's what's going on right now. It's changing things. It is fulfilling Bible prophecy. The beast of Daniel is starting to be visible. It's kind of like having a shark circling the boat, right? You see that fin sticking up? That's kind of where we're at with this. The beast is surfacing. There's lots of evidence for this. You need to know about this. We want to share with you about it. We want to ask you to come to the seminar and learn about the beast of Daniel and learn how these things are actually being fulfilled, what is ahead of you, and what needs to happen, what you need to do. You know, one of the things that we're going to talk about at the seminar is an end-time action plan. Do you have one? You know, you might have a to-go bag in case of a hurricane or an earthquake or something. But do you have an end-time action plan? Should you have one? Well, why do you think Yeshua said so many times to be on the watch? Why would you watch if you didn't know what to do once you saw something? You need an end-time action plan. We're going to help you develop one. So come and be a part. Thanks for listening. Beast of Daniel Surfacing is our new seminar on the book of Daniel with previously unknown information to give you understanding and knowledge regarding the beast that is about to surface and change the world and change your life. You can participate in this seminar online absolutely free of charge. To sign up for this is absolutely free. This is being offered as a public service to everyone who needs this information. To sign up and to receive more details, please go to our website at www.tsiyon.org. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with our latest YouTube videos. Please post this video and share it with your friends.